Everyone loves the idea that Smokey Yunick's famous garage was a sealed vault packed with outlaw engines, secret blueprints, and inventions so controversial that NASCAR wanted them erased from history. It sounds like the perfect legend. But when Smokey passed away from leukemia on May 9, 2001, and the doors to his legendary Daytona Beach workshop finally opened, the truth turned out to be even more remarkable. Instead of a hidden fortress of forbidden technology, people found something far more human. A working garage frozen in time. And scattered among the everyday tools were inventions that had been years, sometimes decades, ahead of their time. But what exactly was waiting inside? Just weeks after Smokey's funeral, the building at 957 North Beach Street welcomed the public instead of secret investigators or racing officials. Hundreds of fans traveled from all over America, some driving from states as far away as Maine and Oregon, hoping to take home a small piece of racing history. This wasn't an exclusive auction for wealthy collectors. It was a public garage sale where a $5 hammer sat beside rare racing parts and experimental engines. Every shelf seemed to tell a story. But one item immediately stood out above the rest. Why would someone ask $20,000 for a single engine? Among the dusty shelves sat a hand-built engine carrying an unbelievable claim. It could supposedly deliver 80 miles per gallon. Nearby were stacks of hubcaps, old exhaust pipes, Smokey's well-used typewriter, and even a working 1950s GMC dealership sign. His widow, Marge Yunick, looked around at the organized chaos and laughed that they were like a junkyard, but a first-class junkyard. More importantly, she explained that Smokey would never have wanted these tools gathering dust inside a museum. He wanted them back in the hands of mechanics, racers, and fans who would actually use them. But why was that so important to him? Smokey had spent his entire career bringing forgotten machines back to life. He cared far more about ideas than ownership. His family believed he would have hated the thought of wealthy collectors locking everything behind glass. Instead, the money from the sale went towards a foundation that would encourage future innovation in motorsports. His daughter, Trish Yunick Brown, later said that while people were taking home his tools, she was holding on to something far more valuable. His stories. Those stories revealed a man famous for finding every legal gray area imaginable, earning him the nickname NASCAR's wildest cheater. Yet that nickname missed the bigger picture. Was he really cheating, or was he simply thinking further ahead than everyone else? As fans carried away hammers and spare parts, they unknowingly left behind the garage's greatest treasures. Hidden among the remaining collection were engines that challenged everything Detroit believed about fuel economy and performance. These weren't rumors. They were real machines that engineers had tested. And the numbers they produced sounded almost impossible. So how could one mechanic achieve results that massive car companies failed to copy? The answer was Smokey's hot vapor engine. Starting with a modest 2.5-liter Pontiac Fiero engine that originally made around 90 horsepower, Smokey transformed it into something extraordinary. His version produced roughly 250 horsepower while returning about 51 miles per gallon on premium fuel. Even more impressive, it accelerated from 0 to 60 in around 6.5 seconds. That combination of power and efficiency seemed impossible during the 1980s. Yet independent engineers confirmed the results. So what was his secret? Instead of cooling the fuel and air before combustion like most engines, Smokey used heat that would normally be wasted. Exhaust heat and engine warmth turned the fuel into a complete vapor before it entered the cylinders. This allowed the engine to burn an extremely lean fuel mixture with incredible efficiency. The design was surprisingly simple in concept, but incredibly difficult to perfect. Working alongside carburetor expert Ralph Johnson, Smokey refined the idea over years of testing. The team even built similar versions using Buick, Ford, and Dodge engines, all delivering remarkable fuel economy. But if the technology worked so well, why did it disappear? Detroit engineers verified the performance. The engines even met strict emissions standards without relying on computers. Yet the projects never reached production. High manufacturing costs, concerns about long-term durability, legal complications, and what many called the "not invented here" attitude killed the idea before it could reach showrooms. Instead of becoming the future of motoring, the engines became forgotten experiments. Thankfully, they weren't all lost. Several survived, preserved by Smokey's family and later by dedicated enthusiasts. But those engines weren't the only evidence of his imagination. His patent history tells an even bigger story. What else had he been quietly inventing? Between 1978 and 1996, Smokey secured at least 9 United States patents covering everything from fuel systems to engine testing and oil management. His hot vapor research alone produced multiple patents explaining exactly how the technology worked. Once those patents entered the public domain, anyone could study them. Yet many people overlook another side of Smokey's work. His obsession with making racing safer. And that obsession began after unimaginable heartbreak. What changed everything? In 1964, Smokey lost one of his closest friends when Fireball Roberts suffered fatal burns following a crash. The tragedy transformed him. He became determined to improve driver safety, proposing better fuel cells and stronger protection for racers. Many of those ideas were rejected. Years before modern energy-absorbing barriers appeared, Smokey designed an early soft-wall system using old tires trapped between heavy sheets of plywood. The concept was meant to absorb impacts instead of allowing cars to slam directly into concrete. Officials ignored it. Decades later, safer barriers became standard across major racing circuits. How many injuries might have been prevented if someone had listened sooner? His ideas weren't limited to safety. In 1961 he introduced pneumatic air jacks that could lift a race car almost instantly during pit stops. NASCAR rejected them. The following year he mounted an enormous aerodynamic wing onto an Indy 500 car. Officials quickly banned that too. Ironically, wings would later become essential in Formula One, IndyCar, and countless other racing series. Again and again, Smokey seemed to arrive years before everyone else was ready. But nowhere was that more obvious than with one famous Chevrolet. Was the legendary 7/8 scale Chevelle actually real? The myth has spread for decades. According to the story, Smokey built a Chevelle that was secretly smaller than every other car on the track. In reality, the truth was much cleverer. His Chevelles were not dramatically undersized. Instead, he made dozens of tiny aerodynamic improvements. The body sat slightly further back on the chassis. The floor was reshaped. The roof and windows were subtly lowered. The windscreen angle changed. Even the front bumper became part of the aerodynamic package. Each modification seemed insignificant on its own. Together they created a much faster car. When NASCAR inspectors realized something unusual was happening, they struggled to explain why Smokey's cars performed so well. Their solution changed the sport forever. They created body templates to measure every race car entering competition. Those inspection templates are still part of NASCAR today. Smokey hadn't broken the rules. He had simply forced the rulebook to evolve. That approach defined his entire career. He constantly discovered opportunities hidden inside the regulations, whether by improving aerodynamics or finding creative ways to carry extra fuel. But perhaps the clearest picture of his thinking came from his own words. What did he leave behind? As his battle with leukemia drew to a close, Smokey completed an enormous autobiography titled Best Damn Garage in Town. Spanning roughly 1,100 pages across 3 volumes, it covered everything from his childhood to stock car racing, the Indianapolis 500, and countless inventions. Filled with hundreds of photographs, it became the most complete record of his life. Rather than relying on myths or second-hand stories, readers could hear Smokey's own voice explaining why he made the choices he did. The book also addressed another interesting mystery. Smokey often described flying more than 50 bombing missions during the Second World War. Official military records tell a slightly different story, confirming his decorated service with the 15th Air Force, his rank as second lieutenant, and his Air Medal, while differing on some of the details he later remembered. Whether memory or official paperwork told the fuller story remains open to debate. But his achievements in racing required no debate at all. Over his career, Smokey collected 57 NASCAR Cup victories as an owner and crew chief, won championships, helped claim victory at the 1960 Indianapolis 500, became the first owner to win back-to-back Daytona 500s, and earned induction into more than 30 motorsports halls of fame. Yet despite all those honors, many people still remember him mainly as a rule-bender. Maybe that's because the myths are simply more entertaining than the facts. Or maybe the facts are even more impressive. After the public sale, the garage property itself was sold in 2003. Most of the buildings were eventually demolished, and the last remaining structure was destroyed by fire on April 25, 2011. By then, however, the garage's true legacy had already spread across the country. Some of the hot vapor engines remained with Smokey's family. Others found homes in museums. Enthusiast Tony Allers restored one running Fiero before donating it to the Don Garlits Museum of Drag Racing. Another engine is believed to be on long-term loan to the Smithsonian. Original tools, signs, and even parts of the garage itself now live in private collections. Yet the greatest pieces of Smokey's legacy cannot be placed inside display cases. They live inside modern racing itself. Standardized inspection templates exist because of his Chevelle. Aerodynamic wings became essential after ideas that once seemed outrageous. Pit-stop technology evolved beyond concepts that had first been rejected. Safer racetracks eventually embraced principles he had proposed years earlier. Even his engine patents remain available for engineers searching for better efficiency today. That is the real story people discovered after Smokey Yunick's death. Not a secret vault hidden from the world, but something much more powerful. They found proof of a man who refused to stop asking difficult questions. A mechanic who challenged enormous companies with little more than creativity, persistence, and a willingness to ignore conventional thinking. His tools, patents, engines, and autobiography all pointed to the same conclusion. Smokey Yunick wasn't simply ahead of his time. He spent his entire life forcing everyone else to catch up. And perhaps that's why, decades after his garage disappeared, his greatest invention is still inspiring people to think differently.